Welcome to the Aligned Life podcast by yours truly, Dr. Tiffany. How about we get out that magnifying glass and look at every part of your life? The awesome, the suck, and everything in between. There's so much beauty in you. Stop being afraid of what isn't good enough and let's double down on what is together. It's about your truth and your life, aligned. Hey. Welcome back to the Aligned Life podcast with moi, Dr. Tiff. Today is a bit heavier. I'm going to dig into an experience that I had in high school in hopes that anyone who has struggled with similar experiences can have hope and some strategies and tactics to move through it. So it's a buzzword. It's an icky word. It's a word that many people don't understand. They think it's overused. They think we're being soft. There's a lot of different opinions for bullying. And I did not realize it was bullying back then, but wow, it was totally bullying. And it doesn't really matter what other people's definition is. When you experience it, you know. I didn't experience it because I was weak or I didn't have any self-esteem, so I couldn't handle it. Like, that is not what it was. It truly is bullying when you don't have a voice, when there are threats, when you don't feel like you can live in safety. So a bit of the backstory. We lived in a small town. I don't know how many people lived there, 800 maybe, from the age of birth through the end of my 7th grade year. And that small town, I had 20 or so people in my class, 20, 24. Everyone knew each other in the community. You know, we had the grocery store and the hardware store and the craft store. That's about it. The school, a bar, that's pretty much it. So everybody knew everybody. You knew everybody in your class. You knew their family. It was kind of like family in a small town like that. I think anybody who grew up in similar instances knows what I mean. And so my dad got a job offer and we up and left. Oh my gosh, world's worst nightmare ever for a middle school girl who, life was pretty darn good. There was no discomfort. Talk about comfort zones. That's what it all was. And so I was totally rocked. I remember actually in 5th grade when it was a potential to move because of a job. And from 5th to 7th grade, I'm pretty sure I was on pins and needles, just waiting for that time. And so we move the summer before my 8th grade year. Difficult times when you're a middle school girl and boy, but I was a middle school girl, so I'm going to talk to that experience. And I didn't realize that not all situations are easy or that you're liked or that it could be really difficult. So I came in pretty naive. That changed fast. So I remember it was not many days into the year, and I started getting just odd vibes from some people, girls, and weird looks, and just felt and even I can just think back then, I just felt like the energy was off. Like, ooh, I don't really know them. They don't really know me either, but it doesn't feel that good right now. And it proceeded to be in classes that you could pick your seat. They'd sit by me and then give me weird looks, like I'm going to fight you kind of looks. There was one time that one girl was wearing a bunch of rings on each one of her fingers and put did that in her fist and looked at me and threatened. And then notes started being passed, like, we're going to kick the, what out of you. You're a XYZ name. And in that whole time, I was like, wow, is this actually happening? Is this real life? What do I do? What do I say? The people that were friends with me, keep in mind, I was new to the school and I was new to the city. So I had a group of friends, of course, but I didn't have a group of besties that totally had my back. So I felt alone and lonely and I didn't ever talk. So I didn't ever communicate what was happening. And this happened, like, I don't really know time frames. That was a long time ago, but it happened for quite a while, just little things. Like I started feeling the pit in my stomach get bigger, and I never wanted to go to the bathroom in school because I felt like I could get trapped in there and they could, quote, jump me in there. That's what they called it. And so it proceeded to get worse. And before lunch, when we would line up, they were circling me. And after lunch, when we'd line up and walk through the tunnel, then they would essentially try to get me. And after lunch, when we're sitting in the gym waiting for our turn to get back to class, they would sit like, it's just kind of like they hunted me. And they'd throw gum in my hair and they'd swear and they'd call me names and all the things. And I'm so thankful now to this day that there were so many friends who were beside me. And I'm not totally sure if I remember or if I acknowledged or anything back in the day, but I had tens, 20 guys that were always surrounding me. So I was in the circle and they were surrounding me. And of course, I had a lot of friends who were girls too, but weren't going to be in this situation because when these other girls were trying to get to me, they were actually hitting and trying to jump over these guys to get to me. So of course the girls, that's not that comfortable. I don't know what I would do in 8th grade, but I probably would have ran away. And so I remember they finally got me, and it was in the hallway. And after multiple weeks and months of this happening every day, it was in the hallway, and one of them like threw me up, pinned me up against the locker, pulled my hair. I don't know. And there were, I think 5 or 6 girls always around me. I was like the minnow and they were the sharks. And that's when at least we got called to the principal's office. And I remember being there like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm in a safe place now because I hadn't told anybody. I had hardly told my parents. The friends knew, but as before, we didn't even have technology, and thank goodness. But I mostly kept everything to myself. And I thought, man, once we get in this principal's office, it's going to at least change because somebody knows. And it did change a little bit. It probably changed my perspective more than ever, knowing that I might not die. So I remember being in that office, and this is what I learned about perspectives. The 2 gals that were the ringleaders said I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't effing touch you. Oh, I was like, whoa. Well, you pinned me up against the locker and all the things, and I couldn't stop crying because I was like, oh my gosh, this is how people are. Never saw a different perspective. I never saw struggle. I never saw anger. I never saw mean ever. And I had this idea that the world is utopia. It is family. Everybody loves and all these things. I believe this was one of my first turning points now that I look back at life of that things can get hard. And the only thing that can get you out of hard is you. So in this process I knew I had support, but I started to think that I can't stand out. Like, oh, if I just fit in and if I just, don't look pretty today, and if I just don't play that well in my basketball game, and if I just don't hang out with the popular kids, maybe they won't notice me. Maybe they won't see me. Maybe they won't pick on me. Maybe I won't be hurt. And so much of this happened through the fall, winter, spring. Spring was when there were a few moments that were not good. And that's when I started noticing, anxiety that didn't go away. Like I always had this icky chest, heart, breathing, gut. And then I started noticing that I was kind of depressed. And I had never felt that before. But from there on out, every spring until I realized it, which wasn't a ton of years ago, every spring I would go into retreat mode, just like I did in high school. I wasn't part of my powder puff games. There were so many things that started happening March through graduation, especially like my freshman through senior year. The cycle happened every single spring. I ate terrible. I gained a lot of weight. I wasn't comfortable in my skin. I was obviously trying to stuff something. And in my only way to do that was to retreat, to not be seen and to continue to hide. And so I lived like that a lot. I lived like not wanting to stand up, not wanting to stand out, not wanting to use my voice because I was terrified that I would be beat up. And I didn't know this stuff happens. I thought I might be killed. I mean, I didn't even feel safe in church. There was one day in church that one of them was in the pew in front of me. She came up there after me and my family sat there, and I didn't feel safe there. That is relying on the external environment. I didn't feel safe internally. So as soon as I lost my power internally, I lost it. I lived in fear for many years through that. And in fear about not being liked, not being accepted, that was the biggest. Because who am I if I'm not liked by my friends? Who am I if I'm not accepted? Well, what started happening was I started to identify what acceptance looked like. And it came from a place of lack. It came from, I'm not good enough. So now I need to be seen. But being seen in the way that I was choosing was not in an empowered way. It was not in a confident way. So I learned to stand up for myself because I put myself in so many situations that I guess I had to just keep learning the lesson. I had to establish body boundaries. I had to establish routine boundaries. I had to establish verbal boundaries and nonverbal boundaries and realize that, my gosh, I made a lot of freaking mistakes. I made so many mistakes just trying to be loved, trying to be accepted, trying to fit in. And although from the outside it looked like I didn't feel it. So I was trying to find that validation. And when I say being bullied changed my life, this was the foundation of it. Because I realized that nobody can ruin your life if you don't allow them to. Nobody can tell you that you are not worthy, not deserved, that you are not beautiful, that you are not loved. That comes from how we feel on the inside. And trauma sits in our cells. It creates its own identity. So the more we listen to it, the more we act from that place, the more we behave that way and we become that person. And I knew that wasn't who I wanted to become. I didn't realize that until after I started having babies and I was in chiropractic school and I was trying to understand people's bodies and why they weren't healing and what was interfering and how trauma can create so many challenges in life if we don't heal it. And what PTSD actually is. I know there's a lot of people. There's a lot of situations that create massive amounts of PTSD. And all of them are valid. There is not one that's worse than the other because how it's processed is through your own filter. So I remember crying every night. I would fall asleep there. I was so scared. I was scared to be in my house. I had never seen that people can treat people like this, but I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't do therapy until late in my high school years. And I was a rebel. I was defiant. Yeah. This was the start of that because I didn't know how I felt and that it wasn't normal. And I didn't have the courage to speak about it. I would just retreat. It's many times I wanted to stay home with my family on weekends, but I thought in order to be accepted, in order to be liked, in order to be in this group, I needed to do that. But I was scared not to do those things. I also learned that sometimes we need to use our voice not only for us, but for someone else. Sometimes people aren't able to speak. Sometimes they're not able to stand up for themselves. And looking back to those moments, I realized how many people I had standing up for me when I had no voice. I didn't even know what was going on and why. I kept asking, like, why? Why me? Well, if I would have continued to live in the why me world, I would still be struggling with it. I would still be in the that happened to me instead of that happened for me. And now I get to learn the lessons that I learned, which were massive. I learned about forgiveness, to send people love that were mean, that in my eyes were evil, because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything to them, but I triggered them somehow, which made me feel like I wasn't a good human. So once I understood this later on, I realized that forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools we can use because it made my heart heal. It healed my trauma attached to that. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forgive them and you allow no more boundaries and they can just continue to do what they need to do. Forgiveness is for you. It's to heal your heart so that you're not fear-based, so you're not resistant, so you don't have that edge, that lack of trust for humanity. Because I was never like that. And for many years in high school and college, I was, because I had that trauma, that hole, that why am I here? I also learned that you need to honor yourself first. And if you don't have honor and respect for yourself, it's likely that other people won't either. All self, I don't know if self-care is the right word. It's not the right word. I can't think of what it is, but we all know that the best investment you can make is on yourself. It's on being aware of how you feel and of what feels good and what doesn't. And then it's understanding why. Why doesn't this feel good? Why doesn't it? And that likely goes way back to the early years. And when we know that we make mistakes, we do. But that can either become us or we can learn from it. And then we can pay it forward in a way that I know will help so many more people because I went through that experience. I also learned that hurt people hurt other people. And this took me a really long time because I thought I was the target. I was, but I wasn't. Hurt people hurt other people. Understanding that in life, in all parts of life, when there's challenge, there's also support. And sometimes this is really difficult to see because we're in the challenge and it feels heavy and mucky and dark and scary, whatever that looks like. But understanding that there's an equal amount of support and love in the challenge that you're going through. So if you're going through challenges, if you're going through amazing success, know there's always an equal balance. This helped me as I looked back because in the process of when all of this was happening, the friends that I had in the small town that I came from, we had a falling out. I'm not sure what happened there either. All I know is I get on a call with them, long distance phone call. Phone is stuck on the wall for those who didn't grow up in that era. And all 6 or 7 of them were on the phone. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I totally need you. I need my friends. I need my friends back. It's hard here. And in the meantime, for over a half hour, they continued to say how awful of a person I was. I don't know. I was maybe gossiping or talking behind someone's back, or I don't know, in 7th grade, problems are pretty big. So in that process of misery, waking up every morning and trying to go to school, not having support from where I came from, which I thought those were my people, I felt alone. And now when I look back, I think of, wow, but I had so many people around me. I didn't always notice it. I didn't always see it. And I definitely didn't acknowledge it. I had an equal amount of support around me as much as challenge. And in that process of the old friends, I released in thinking, if I'm not their person, then I'm not going to continue to try to be. So in the challenge, I found friends, different friends. And it's one of the things I learned from that stage in life. The 1 year, the 2 year, same processes happened all the way through high school. There were different people that I was always afraid of that laid their hands on me. And although that's not appropriate, and although that's not right, I forgive them. I forgive myself. And I know, wow, did I learn lessons about myself, about setting boundaries, about using my voice, about saying no, about what love is, when you need to release, when you need to fight back. I learned about courage to stand up, not only for myself, but other people who cannot stand, who don't have a voice. I learned to see things through a very objective lens. I could see situations. I could feel energy. And once I detached from not trying to impress people as much, I realized that these girls, women, were hurt people. And I'm going to rise up and I'm going to tell stories so that someone else could hear this story and realize how to overcome. I still see those people. I still see those women. I hope they've healed their trauma. I hope their relationships are different, because as humans, the only person responsible for ourselves and showing up in love is us. This experience gave me empathy for the work that I do now. Empathy in a deep soul way. When I know there's struggle and they don't feel like they can talk and they don't want to get out of bed, but they do. And when we don't let these experiences define us, we let it move us, we start to teach the lessons that we learned by overcoming them. We all have yuck that we went through in life. We all have different levels of trauma. Nobody's trauma is less than someone else's because it's through the eye of the beholder. But one thing is true, you are responsible for it. You're responsible for defining the lessons that came from those situations. You are responsible for how you show up and how you behave. You're responsible for changing the pattern, the generational pattern, so that you don't parent to avoid your kids feeling as if you did. Heal that so there is no charge. You are responsible for helping more people by using your voice in how you overcame the tough stuff. We have a tendency of hiding. We have a tendency of thinking that our story doesn't need to be talked about. But in the work I do now, through chiropractic, through mentoring, I see that my story can change the world. I see that my stories of strife, challenge, heartbreak can change how people view themselves. They can inspire you. They can empower you to learn what you needed to learn from the challenge and help more people and pay it forward. Because anything that is to be healed needs to come to light. It isn't meant to stay in your body, to not be worked through, to not be talked about, to not be healed. Bullying is a real thing. And I would challenge anybody who says, yeah, whatever, we've just become a weak society, to feel what those people feel. Maybe you don't have high confidence. Maybe you struggle with body image. Maybe you're not sure you want to be on this earth anymore. You can't say how someone else feels. Yet at the same time, that person is responsible for overcoming it. So I've learned forgiveness, self-respect, and honor. I've learned that hurt people hurt other people. I've learned challenge and support go hand in hand. To speak for me And when someone else needs a voice, to have the courage to speak for them. I've learned to have courage to stand out instead of making yourself small, instead of fitting in, instead of going with the flow when you know in your soul that it's not right. I've learned fairness and a whole lot of empathy. Empathy for kids, empathy for their parents, empathy for the hurt people, empathy for families and for our world. When we start to embody our life through our experiences and lessons, we can start to live with love. Because when we honor and respect ourselves, we won't hurt people. We all have a story. I think the key is not accepting that as your reality. You get to choose that. And then you get to choose how you can share that story and help more people. I hope this helps, whether this is you and you're parenting your kids, whether you have multiple generations below you, or whether you're a kiddo and you're listening to this and you need help, reach out to me. If you don't feel comfortable reaching out to your parents or your teachers or your friends, reach out to me, because you have the power to choose different. You have the power to change your life through this experience, as long as we see that there are lessons alongside the challenges. So I send my love out to anybody struggling, or in my case, something that's happened 20, 25 years ago that was one of my pivotal moments. I invite you to bring it up to the surface to heal that so that you can release it. And you don't need to live in fear or distrust or anger, or you don't need to live in a space of hurting other people because you are hurt. So let's help each other. Let's join hands. Let's stand up, stand out, have courage to speak and to heal your trauma. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you for listening and following the Aligned Life podcast with Dr. Tiffany. If you love this and can think of anyone who needs to hear about it, would you mind sharing with them? Find me online at drtiffanyjohnson.com, where you can find out more about my memberships, courses, mentoring, and any upcoming events. To learn more about chiropractic for you and your family, go to htchiro.com and follow our social pages. I can't wait to connect with you soon, and until then, be you, be aligned.